naughty.
Ah, good morning, ladies.
Ursula and I think you're a very naughty boy, don't we, Ursula?
Oh, God. Oh, really?
Basil isn't as horrible to them as he is to the guests. They're kind of part of his routine and they're part of the home. So he can control them, in a way. And they want to look after him, but he won't allow them. But he's never really cruel to them or the Major.
Nearly 6 o'clock, Fawlty.
Is it?
Yes, well, when you're ready, might have a fruit juice or
Yes,
something.
well, I'll open up the moment I've done this, Major, yes?
No immediate hurry.
Drunken old sod.
When Connie and I wrote the Major in the first episode, I don't think we had any thought of repeating the character, but when you see something and you think, oh, that's good, and we think, well, he'll be a regular.
How are you, sir? I can speak English.
He really grew on us, and I loved the scene with the moose's head.
Ah, hello, Major. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
You also got a different quality from John, I think, with the Major, because you felt he liked the Major.
I rather fell in love with Ballard Berkeley. I just thought he was the finest kind of English gentleman of a slightly bygone era. There was a sweetness to him and a kindness that was very, very touching.
As a former matinee idol and much-loved television actor, Ballard Berkeley brought over 40 years' experience to the part.
Well, I mean, what a lot of people don't realise is how old Dad was when he started doing Fawlty Towers. I mean, he was nearly, late 70s, I suppose, when he finished it. And people forget, that he, had a career of sort of 60 years before that.
We were never nervous about Dad being the Major because it was so much him, a great character for him to play, because it was so like him, except he wasn't dippy like that.
No,
he was just affable and charming and got away with lots of stuff.
Dad's always thought of as a sort of military man, so when it comes to his war service, I think most people really sort of think he must have been, in the army. But of course, as we know, he was in the police and he got a beat in just off Piccadilly in Vine Street,
Central, wasn't it?
which was ideal for him because he loved the West End. The theatre was there, all his friends were there.
I must have been keen on her because I took her to see India.
India?
At the Oval.
He was a mad cricket fan. And I remember once I was rehearsing a scene with Sybil, and we were doing the dialogue, and I glanced over, and there was Ballard, meaning the third Australian wicket was down. I couldn't even wait till the end of the scene.
My daughter still almost inevitably will introduce herself and say, my grandfather, because she loves talking about him, and it's because she gets such a good reaction as well.
As well as stars of the silver screen, the hotel environment also offered the perfect setting for some of Britain's best-loved actors to check in as guest stars.
You knew that you were being invited to be on something very special, and so it was a great privilege, and one felt blooming lucky.
John and Connie wrote a script that is unbelievably fine. They're gifted, truly gifted writers.
Now look, it's finished. Give those to me. Come on.
I think what John and Connie wrote was very tight and very complete, far more than most shows. There wasn't a lot of room for improvement.
These sitcom veterans were enticed onto the show by the gag-packed scripts that are now regarded as a masterclass in sitcom writing.
Sorry.
Connie and I used to spend 6 weeks figuring out each script, and something like 2.5 weeks before we wrote a line of dialogue.
John had a small study and a very big desk. The desk faced the wall. We just started to play.
I used to type onto an old-fashioned typewriter, but we just sat there and talked to each other and, might write a word down or say, what was that thing that happened? You remember the scene where the lovely Australian girl has got the tarry handprint on her boob. Well, we'd had that idea, and we were writing weeks later. Connie said, what was that idea we had about that would work here? And I said, yes.
What's that in your hand, Basil?
What? Oh, that's some stuff in the cupboard, dear. Something I knocked over.
John is highly instinctive, and I think he knew that he wanted to be monitored in some way, and that's why he wanted me on board.
Basil?
Hi, dear. Just checking the doors.
I think that the women were very, very well written in Fawlty Towers, and that was basically Connie, because I remember suggesting a line early on, and Connie saying a woman would never say that. And I was saying, what, really? Wouldn't you? Why? You know, so it was a tremendous learning process, and although at the beginning I was writing most of Basil and Manuel, and she was writing Sybil and Polly, towards the end we were much more crossing over, and she was writing much more of Basil.
Come on, give it to me.
But this fast-paced farce presented huge problems when it came to production.
Fawlty Towers differed from a lot of the sitcoms that were current at that time, but by virtue of the volume of the script. The average sitcom script was somewhere between 60 and 70 pages. These scripts ran 120, 130 pages.
Most of the episodes were too long, so Connie and John had to go off and rewrite them. And they were, in fact, I think they're still too longer than the normal. I mean, it's not 29 minutes, 30 seconds, it's 35 minutes, all that sort of thing.
In fact,